Hey everyone, Voltie here. Over the weekend, Mana Clash 25 happened. There was a massive singles event and a teams event over the course of 2 weekends at Coburg Town Hall. All of it has been uploaded to YouTube in terms of the commentary and coverage, and I was part of that team. But today I'm putting my committee/analyst hat on, and we're going to be looking at the stats of the Mana Clash singles event. So some quick stats and a basic rundown. There were 160 players, which meant 8 rounds of Swiss and a top 8. The top 8 decks were 7 unique decks, and that was across 6-ish archetypes. We had 3 Blue-Black X, 2 Blue Moon-esque, although I don't really know how to classify one of those, Reanimator, Bant Nadu, and Shops. And out of the top 8, there were 3 8-point decks, and that's really exciting as well. So the top 8 decks were Grixis in the hands of Juzza, who took the event down, 8-point Jeskai Moon with Liam, Reanimator by Ed, 8-point Blue Moon by Peter, Grixis by JLS, 8-point Blue Black by Kyle, Bant Nadu by Mulch, and Shops by Trent. The most played pointed cards over the weekend were notable offenders. We have Force of Will, Ragavan, Deathrite Shaman, Reanimate, Tamiyo, Psychic Frog, Orcish Bowmasters, Urza's Saga, Murktide Regent, and 4th Earlingus. From this list, everything is at 1 point currently. Ragavan recently went from 2 down to 1, and Tamiyo went from 0 up to 1 in the TDM update, but all of these are currently 1 point cards. The top cards by point buy look quite similar. However, there are 3 additions based on their point buy amount, which are Walk, which had 55 points overall, Sol Ring at 36 points, and Lotus at 32. For the most played main board cards, a lot of these are the same as well as we would normally expect, but I do think the order is a bit interesting here. So we have 142 missteps out of 160 possible, still incredibly high, but then we have Brainstorm, Ponder, Probe, and Thoughtseize, all very expected. Bolt, Preordain, Inquisition, Mishra's Bauble, and Fatal Push. I think it is interesting the gap between Thoughtseize and Fatal Push, considering they should, in theory, fit into the same decks, but obviously because of black-based combo decks that aren't relying on interacting with the board, there is that gap there. Lightning Bolt also going to 82 copies and overtaking Preordain. It's been a while since Lightning Bolt has done really well, and I think some of the shifts in colors that have happened with the TDM update are probably worth looking at. The most played sideboard cards, no surprises here. We have 2 Rebs, 2 Bebs, Consign, Carpet, Submerge, Ashiok, Hearse, and Vacuum. The big thing I want to point out is that Consign to Memory has skyrocketed, and Carpet of Flowers is overtaking several cards that are not green. We have Submerge, Ashiok, Hearse, and Vacuum, which are all either blue or colorless, and Carpet of Flowers has overtaken them. The top pointed cards by top 8 conversion factor. The top 8 conversion factor is less of a metric that I would weigh on, but I do think it's worth noting. Uro had a very, very good weekend, as did Vamp Tutor. Dig Through Time and Snapcaster Mage punched well above their weight. Workshop, Murktide, and Lutri all did quite well, I would say. Oath of Druids, Tamiyo, and Mana Drain did reasonably well, I would say. The worst pointed cards were Orcish Bowmasters, Urza's Saga, 4th Earlingus, Ancient Tomb, and Mana Vault. Now these are cards that did top 8, but weren't doing very well overall, considering how many copies were in the room. So there are plenty of cards that would be at 0.00, but obviously that's not relevant information because they didn't top 8 and we don't get to know how well or poorly they did in that metric. The best pointed cards by winning conversion factor, which is a metric that I rate more, we have Gifts Ungiven, Time Twister, Wish Claw Talisman, and Treasure Cruise, which all maxed out. So every single copy that was registered, which is 1 copy for the first 3 and 2 copies for Cruise, every single copy had a 5-3 record or better. We then had Intuition and Underworld Breach at 2.21. Gush and Mana Drain did reasonably well, approaching the 2.00 mark. The worst pointed cards by winning conversion factor: White Plume, Broadside, Lutri, Sol Ring, and Nadu. I think Nadu is probably an outlier here. I think White Plume, Broadside, Lutri, and Sol Ring kind of make sense because they're very 8-point favorable cards. Nadu, a bit of a change or a bit of a separation from that group because it usually appears in 7-point decks, but those 5 cards had a very bad weekend. The top pointed cards by winning conversion factor with at least 4 copies converting into the 5-3 bracket, we have Intuition, Underworld Breach, Mana Drain, Dig Through Time, Tinker, Flage, which had a really good weekend, Fourth Eolingus in double digits, Snapcaster, Tolarian Academy, and Tamiyo at 16 with a 1.26 CF, which is above average, but not by much. Now for the TDM update, I wanted to show a slide of how many cards appeared on each of the cards that changed. Ragavan, which went from 2 to 1, had 48 copies. Tamiyo, which went from 0 up to 1, still had 42 copies. Oko, which went from 2 to 1, had 23. Natural Order at 1 to 0 had 18. Nethergoyf at 0 to 1, 15. Planar Nexus 0 to 1, 15. Dig Through Time 2 down to 1 at 12. I think Dig Through Time is really surprising here, and it kind of suggests that it was a depointing that was overdue, and I think Tamiyo being the second highest, even though it went up a point and people are still willing to register the card, pretty significant, and I think it's very clear that it was deserving of its point. Now for the TDM update specific cards, here are their conversion factors by a winning CF, which again is a metric that I value. Dig Through Time did the best out of the 7 cards. Natural Order did okay, 1.29 is pretty respectable when the max is 3.31. Tamiyo did a little bit worse than NO. Planar Nexus did pretty poorly, but still technically above average. Oko was as close to 1.00 as you can get without hitting it. Oko performed exactly as expected, plus a little bit. And Ragavan and Nethergoyf performed worse and much worse than expected. By the top 8 CF, which again is a different metric, but Dig Through Time, Tamiyo, and Oko all did quite well. I would say Dig Through Time and Tamiyo did reasonably well, and everything else did okay. So Oko, Planar Nexus, Nethergoyf, Ragavan, and NO, all of these cards had above a 1.00 for the top 8 CF, NO mainly because of Mulch, and Nethergoyf mainly because of Jazza. For general archetype data, I've broken it down a little bit in how I would expect to explain the archetypes in the future, so keep an eye out for future presentations as well. We had 26 8-point decks in total, and 8 of those pilots went 5-3 or better, with 3 of those pilots making top 8, which I think is very, very impressive for the 8-point community. Otherwise, we had 38 Blue X mid-range decks. This is your Grixis, 4-color soup, etc. But it is not mid-range decks that have the ability to pull a combo kill off. And I'll get into that. 32 full combo decks, so things like Reanimator and Thoracle and Storm, which don't really have a plan B. 28 aggro decks. This is for prowess and initiative. That's where I've lumped these, although there are plenty of aggressive draws in a lot of the other decks on the list. This was for decks that aren't trying to trade resources, but are instead trying to assemble damage. 18 mid-range combo. This is for your combo decks that have backup plans, so Walks and Nadu fall into this category, and there were 18 copies in total. 17 big mana decks. Shops and Eldrazi are the big ones. I don't believe there were any that fell outside of those categories, although I did mark the scales list under big mana. 16 non-blue mid-range, so this is for Jund and Mardu, as well as Junk and any other color combinations people come up with. If you're a black-red deck that's much slower, for example, this would be where you'd fall. And then 10 true control decks. This is for Jeskai and Blue Moon. Overall, I think the metagame was about as expected. I think the event went really well, and I think the fact that, there were so many things that happened over the course of the weekend that were kind of cool, like the 3 8-point decks making it to top 8, one of them making it to the finals. Overall, very solid event, very interesting showing for the TDM update. But otherwise, that's going to be it from me for now. Keep an ear out for the next time round. It'll be the RC side event. That'll be the next time we do stats. But otherwise, that's it from me. I'll catch you all later.